Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Vanessa, and I am the Director of Business Development here at Med and Dental Intelligence. And I'm coming to you live today because I thought we should talk more about marketing. I know Local Med really ties into marketing for the practice, and there's all different types of marketing they've been doing for your practice. It might seem overwhelming, or you don't know where to begin, or maybe you just don't want to deal with it and you just want to have someone else handle it for you. And one of the ways that you can market your practice is through story-driven marketing. So I thought I'd call basically the king of story-driven marketing, my good friend, Joshua Scott, who is the CEO and founder of Studio 88. So how are you, Josh?
I am good. So it's so good to see you. I mean, we were just talking, it's been over a year. Almost a year since we last got to hang out at DWOW and New Orleans. So like anytime I can get on a video and hang out with friends right now, it's awesome.
Yes, it's always like a little bit of a reunion, and the time right before the pandemic when we're at Delivering Wow, it was, I mean, those that are listening, they were shutting things down while we're at this meeting. And so Josh is literally like the last human being I felt like I saw in Dennis before the world shut down. And it's crazy to think it's a year later, but I think a lot of things have changed since then too. And even just how practices are marketing, how they're getting new patients, even how they're utilizing Local Med has changed. You know, before it was very much of new patient focus, and then it turned into recall, where a lot of people are using that to get their hygiene booked because of the pandemic. So I know a lot of things have changed. I know story-driven marketing is becoming more and more popular and essential in some places, I think, for marketing, especially for dentists. So Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you guys do at Studio 88, and then we'll kind of jump into and talk more about story-driven marketing.
Yeah, you know, it's funny when you say that, because I remember I was the last speaker for that DWOW conference, and you know, it's maybe a 4 o'clock time slot or something like that, and they were literally shutting everything down. And Anissa, I think she cut a speaker and cut 15 minutes off of everybody, and she's like, "You're speaking at 2 because we have to be out of here at 3." And I'm like, okay.
It's go time. We can do this.
I know. So that was how we left things. But yeah, look, you know, Studio 88, we call ourselves Dentistry Story-Driven Marketing Agency. And what that means is we get to know our clients and what makes them unique, their story, and then build that in the digital space. And I think for me, it's better marketing because it's marketing that's true. Like it's actually authentic. And we're getting out of this space where we create stuff because it gets clicks or because it's sexy or whatever, and kind of going like, but who's the humans on the other end of it? And so that's kind of been our approach to it is, and I think post-COVID, gosh, this has become so much more important. Of everybody's really driven even more so online, these digital environments, which is why like Local Med has become so important, right? Like virtual consults, like we've really integrated all these digital apps and connection tools, but yet getting to a website or getting to marketing that actually speaks and connects with an empathetic human on the other side is a huge piece of that.
Yeah, and I can see that since the pandemic of just digitally, we're trying to find ways to connect with people that we didn't have to before, and that's how we're wanting to connect. And so with what you all do, you know, you're trying to tell the stories of different dental practices and through their marketing. So what does that actually entail? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean of, you know, you have someone who's like, "Hey, Josh, I want you to help with my practice. I want to get some new patients." What does that process look like? Like, what does a practice need to have or should be looking to do when they're trying to have a little bit more story-driven marketing?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Our approach, it's we try to simplify it into this 3-step process. And the first step when we work with a client is discovering the story. So that's number one. And a lot of times when dental practices are notorious for jumping all the way to the end of like, "Hey, I need new patients." And I'm like, well, let's back up a couple steps and go like, who are we? What's unique to us? What are we really communicating to patients?
And how do you get that out of them? I know that sounds really a silly question to ask, but like, even for me, if someone's like, "Oh, tell me about yourself," I feel like I'm like one of the most boring people in the world. And people might not think that like outside, like, no, Vanessa, you're great. Like, you know, but sometimes when you're talking about yourself, you feel awkward, you feel weird, you don't think you're that interesting. So when practices are looking at, you know, their practice, like, well, I'm a great dentist. But it's like, how do you kind of like pull out more of a story for that? Because I'm sure a lot of people feel that way too, where they're like, well, I just like being a dentist, I like what I do, and I like my team.
Yeah, no. Well, so you're not boring. Yeah. Look, I don't think anybody would think you're boring. But that's this happens all the time, and part of it is like when we're in it on the micro day to day, it's really hard to see it, right?
Right.
And so a lot of times, like working with a company like us, we can look at a high level. And, you know, through that process, we have a couple of different tools that help us get to know our clients. One of them is called a brand creator. It's a workbook that they kind of go through. It's a ton of fun. But a lot of times we see something and we're like, oh, that right there, like, that's not normal. And you're like, but everybody does this. And this is unique. I'm like, no, this is really cool. So it's that type of stuff. It's getting another person to come in and go, this right here, like that piece, like that's amazing. That's beautiful. We don't see that all the time. That's unique to you. And you get stuck in that comparison game where, you know, we've got some kind of high profile clients and another practice might come to us and be like, but I'm not like them.
Right.
So
right.
What can you do with me? And the deal is, it's like, look, everybody's got a story, and it doesn't have to be this, you know, like dramatic, traumatic, like over the top thing. It's just, even sometimes it's like, what made you choose dentistry? How do you take care of patients? Sometimes it's just focusing on those things.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be you personally. It can be the story of the practice and how it exists in this community. So that's been one of the things we had to solve early on, is how do we drill down on story in a consistent way for every client. So, but that's what makes up the basis of the foundation. And those are all the branding pieces. You know, it's your name, it's your logo, it's your color palette, it's photography, it's video, it's all those things that now capture that story. So that's step one. And then second is real simple. It's now we tell a story. Mm-hmm. So we figured it out. Now let's tell it. And your website's a major driving factor to this. Reviews are as well. And then last would be, now that we know the story is being told well and people connect to it, now let's share it. So digital ads, social media, let's get attention back. You know, a lot of times what happens is practices are like, we need new patients, let's do digital ads. But the website's not really telling a great story because we've never even stopped to figure out what the story is. And so nobody's connecting at that human level.
Right. And patients have so many choices nowadays for finding a dentist in their area. And it's so competitive. And so they are looking for these little things that stand out for a practice. They don't know what makes a great dentist in regards to who actually offers the best implants versus not. So them, an implant's the implant. If they see good reviews, they're like, all right, like they must be good at implants. You know, they don't know all that technical stuff. So when it comes to that, they are looking at, you know, the convenience factor, which is where LocalMed comes to play. But then also with the marketing of, does their website look like it's up to date? Does it look like they have the latest technology? And that's going to be a lot of that stuff is from that first impression of a website. You know, if you have an outdated website, they're going to assume that your practice is outdated, that you're not using the latest technology. And I know it sounds silly, but it is what it is. And so with you know, being able to tell your story through your marketing, it's that additional connection and that pull. I feel like that patients can feel and see. And it's a little bit more that emotion of like, oh, wow, like this doctor seems really nice. They seem that they got into dentistry for this reason, that reason. Like, that's great. Like, I want to have someone who's that passionate about what they do and care for their patients. And that's easy for them to gravitate towards versus maybe like a stock website or, you know, there's a picture of the doctor, no bio. Like, you know, the patient, you're gonna think like, okay, so do they not care about their patients enough to even tell us about like their credentials and what they do? And so I think by telling those stories, it can really help gravitate and pull. And I think you were spot on, Josh, and I didn't even think about that. But ever since the pandemic, I think it's even more because people are looking to find different ways to connect digitally.
Yeah. And look, as things get high tech, I've got this saying, like, as things get high tech, they also have to go high touch. And so what we can't do is just replace human connection with automation and technology.
Yeah.
Like that's part of it, but it needs to augment or accent that reality. It was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I saw this practice and they were talking about, it was a startup, and one of the investments they made was getting really good chairs into the practice. And he kind of just made this statement. And this is just like, it's not even mind blowing, but he was just like, if a patient's going to be in a chair for an hour, I just, think they deserve a great chair to sit in. And immediately I was like, oh, my dentist, their chairs are not awesome. And I always like think about that when I'm sitting there, like, I'm here for an hour. Like, this is not the best. And it's funny because like that, just even that statement tells a story.
Right. It does. But for them, it's just like, well, yeah, I bought them. Like, I don't know what's so big about that.
Right.
So
right.
I can totally see where.
Yeah. But even like having
that, yeah.
Like you guys, like having Local Med on a site tells a story, right? It tells a story of convenience. It tells a story of being like you can say you're technologically advanced, but if you put Local Med on your site, that supports that entire story. People are like, right. Oh yeah, you actually are, because I could schedule online and it was easy and seamless and it worked.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming when I walk into the practice for the first time, it's going to be seamless and easy and it's going to work. And people put that together. It's crazy, but it's like that's the narrative that weaves through it.
Completely. And so with people who are wanting to maybe start telling their story at their practice, trying to find different ways, whether it's them trying to initiate that with themselves or maybe reaching out to a company like you, where's like a good place to start? I mean, is it just like getting, photos, like nice photos taken of the office? Is it, maybe putting together a story for their homepage or a video or all the above? But like, what's kind of like little baby steps for those who might be like, I'm wanting to, dabble with this, but I'm not quite sure how to go about it.
Yeah, honestly, if you want to DIY it, a couple like real quick things is I think a photography session is huge. And look, you can hire us, but you can also find somebody local, and have them come in for $500 and block 2 or 3 hours with the team and just try to capture. Like, honestly, that is such an easy thing to do, just to get custom photography on your site, send them over to your website company, have them update it. Like, just people realizing, oh, this is the actual team and doctors is like mind blowing that dentistry is like this.
Not the stock photos of the people smiling and like the little families of Josh's heart just like breaking as I'm bringing it up right now.
That was our first decision as day one as a company. And I'm not even joking. It was the guys that we started this. It was just like, we almost like pinky promise, like we will never do stock photos ever. So it's like, look, in the big picture is like dentistry deserves better. And the fact that we've done this has not been good for the profession. And people make fun of dental marketing and we all make fun of it. And it's been notoriously bad. And so, I every week have to overcome conversations with people that have been burned with dental marketing companies. So, but that's real easy and can be low cost. I get a photography session, update your site and use that for social media as well. Just people seeing real humans, like you'd be surprised is all the difference. But then creating a narrative, it's that whole concept of like, what's your tagline? Every other company in the world like does taglines, and we kind of lose sight of that in dentistry. But it really is it starts the narrative, and we have a process that we can kind of work through. But it's really identifying your values, like what are the 3-4 driving values in your practice, and let's craft a statement around those. That can really like if you have a direct, like if you go do direct mail, like what does it say? Your tagline, like social media, go back to the tagline, like whatever it is, that's the story. It's going to be repeated for the next 3 to 5 years.
For sure. And being consistent about it. I think that's key, is where you don't want to make it seem like you're all over the place with your marketing in general. But I think with coming up with that story for your practice and, kind of those 3 values that maybe you have, and having that be the core to it, I think that makes it so much easier than to strategize and be strategic about what you're doing in your practice. And even probably as simple as it sounds, but like when you're trying to hire a new hire. I think that it's almost compelling and attractive to someone who may be interviewing for position at your practice when they come in, and it's like, hey, like here's our story, here's our values, here's this and that, and being consistent about that. I know hiring has been difficult for dental practices for many different reasons, and as we're chatting now, I'm like, I could see that being a huge benefit where you could probably get some good talent that way because of your story. So it's not even just patients. I could see where it's even, creating value with people who might want to be working at your practice.
Yeah, the best taglines or stories. I mean, they're great for recruiting. They're great for team alignment, like mission, vision. Like they're good for so many things that it's not just, we get probably a little narrow-minded when it's about just new patients in the practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing with us about, story-driven marketing and kind of what that entails. If people have additional questions, obviously you guys can go ahead and put it in the comments. But if anyone needs to get in touch with you or with Studio 88, maybe they want to work with you or maybe just wanting to connect, what's the best way they can go about doing that?
Yeah, I personally, best place is over at Instagram at Joshua Scott. Just, send me a message. Be more than happy to set up a phone call with you. I'm pretty consultative by nature. So, even no strings attached, no pressure. If you just want to kind of talk and I can help you with strategy and those things. Oftentimes I'm like, look, regardless of whether or not you use me, here's what I think you should do. And then Studio 88, S8E8.com is our website. The letter S, number 8, letter E, number 8.com. Check out our work there and connect as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Definitely check out Josh and his team. We've worked with them at Local Med. They've been fantastic. I know it may seem like I'm great in front of the camera, but I'm definitely not. And they did a couple of videos for us. We went out to North Carolina and they made me feel so comfortable. And it was amazing of where they were able to even just help me tell a story and kind of drive that out of me. And they made me feel so comfortable because let's be honest, it's awkward being in front of a camera at times. Yeah. And so him and his team are fantastic. I've known them for years. And so definitely check them out and maybe start incorporating some, story marketing in your practice and see where it goes. And if you do, let us know about it. We want to hear from you of how that's working out for you. So Josh, thanks again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you all probably next week with another one of these.
Thanks, Vanessa. Always a pleasure.
Bye, guys.